And welcome once again to another edition of Quoth Raven, Lewis Bright Raven. I'm your host, Lewis Bright Raven, 29-year veteran writer, illustrator, editor, and studio manager working in comics, science fiction, fantasy, horror, and role-playing games. Hope you're having a good Friday, and it's our Easter weekend, so we're going to have our theme of Easter movies tonight. Let's get straight into the reviews. We're going to start with the biblical themed stuff, and then we'll go to the more open, fun stuff after that. Okay? And these are in alphabetical order, not so much when they came out or which one's the best or anything like that. Our first movie is Ben-Hur from 1959, directed by William Wyler, produced by Sam Zimbalist, screenplay by Carl Thunberg, credited but Maxwell, Anderson, S.N. Berman, Gore Vidal, and Christopher Fry also worked on the script in the course of the development of the film. Based on Ben-Hur, A Tale of Christ, 1880 novel by General Lew Wallace. Starring Charlton Heston, Jack Hawkins, Hea Harit, Stephen Boyd, Hugh Griffith, Martha Scott, Kathy O'Donnell, and Sam Jaffe. Production company is Metro Goldwyn Mayer. Distributed by Lowe's Incorporated. Release date November 18th of 1959. And a whopping 212-minute runtime, 3 hours and 32 minutes. What a long film. What it's about. In 26 AD, Judah Ben-Hur is a wealthy Jewish prince and merchant in Jerusalem, living with his mother Miriam and his sister Tirzah. The family's loyal slave, the merchant Simonides, pays a visit with his daughter Esther. Seeing each other for the first time since childhood, Judah and Esther fall in love, but she is betrothed to another. After several years away from Jerusalem, Judah's childhood friend Masala returns as a commander of the fortress of Antonia. Masala believes in the glory of Rome and his imperial power, while Judah is devoted to his faith and the freedom of the Jewish people. This difference causes tension between the friends and results in their split after Masala issues an ultimatum demanding that Judah deliver potential rebels to the Roman authorities. During a parade for the new governor of Judea, Valerius Gratus, loose tiles fall from the roof of Judah's house. Gratus is thrown from his horse and nearly killed. Although Masala knows this was merely an accident, he has Judah arrested and thrown in the galleys and imprisons Miriam and Tirzah as well. Simonides confronts Masala and is also imprisoned. Judah swears revenge against Masala. As he and other slaves are marched to the galleys, they stop in Nazareth to water the Romans' horses. Judah begs for water, but the commander of the Roman detachment denies it to him. Judah collapses, but is revived when Jesus gives him water. After 3 years as a galley slave, Judah is assigned to the flagship of the Roman consul Quintus Arrius, who has been charged with destroying a fleet of Macedonian pirates. Arrius admires Judah's determination and self-discipline and offers to train him as a gladiator or charioteer. Judah declines this offer, however. When the Roman fleet encounters the Macedonians, Arrius exempts Judah among all the rowers from being chained to the ship. Arrius's galley is rammed and sunk, but Judah frees as many other rowers as he can and rescues Arrius. Arrius believes he has lost this battle and attempts to fall upon his sword as payment as what they do as Romans, but Judah stops him. Afterwards, he learns that they were actually victorious, and Arrius petitions to have them free Judah and adopts him as a son. Judah becomes a champion charioteer and then returns to Judea. Along the way, he meets Balthazar and Arab Sheikh Adirim. After noting Judah's prowess as a charioteer, the Sheikh asks him to drive his quadriga in a race before the new governor of Judea, Pontius Pilate. Judah declines, even after learning that Masala will compete. Judah returns to Jerusalem. He finds Esther and learns that she is not married and that she still loves him. Miriam and Tirzah have contracted leprosy in prison however, and were expelled from the city. The women beg Esther to conceal their condition from Judah, so Esther tells Judah that they died. Judah smashes his family's mezuzah and then seeks revenge by competing against Masala in the chariot race. Shikadirim goads Masala into making an enormous wager on himself. During the race, Masala drives a chariot with blades on the hubs to disable his competitors. He attempts to destroy Judah's chariot, but wrecks his own instead, and he is dragged behind his horses and trampled upon while Judah wins the race. Before dying, Masala tells Judah to search for his family in the Valley of the Lepers. I don't know if I'm live or not. It just said I was can't cut out. I don't know. Let me see something here. No, it refreshed that. Weird. I don't know what's going on. Okay. Hopefully you guys are still seeing this. I don't know. Anyway, Judah visits the leper colony. Where he confronts Esther while she delivers supplies to his mother and sister. And Esther convinces Judah not to see him. He returns with Esther to the leper colony. He reveals himself to Miriam and learns that Tirzah is dying. Judah and Esther take Miriam and her daughter to see Jesus, but unfortunately the trial of Jesus had begun. And as Jesus is carrying his cross through the streets, he collapses. Judah recognizes him as the man who gave him water all those years before and reciprocates. Judah witnesses the crucifixion of Jesus, and Miriam and Tirzah are miraculously healed. Now, my thoughts. This came out in 1959. And I'm trying to remember, because I kind of see it as a sequel of the sort, even though it's really not. But I look at it as a sequel to the Ten Commandments, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But that movie came out in 1956, and so chronologically, it takes place after the events of the Ten Commandments, and it was made 3 years later as a film. So it kind of feels that way to me. Ben-Hur won 11 Academy Awards. And to me, it feels like the Academy realized it screwed up before when it didn't really give anything to the Ten Commandments. That's kind of like overplaying it to this movie, trying to give it back. I don't know, because the Ten Commandments only won one award, and that was for special effects. At that, now personally, I do think that Charlton Heston was better as Moses in the Ten Commandments than as Judah. But this film is more action oriented in the sense that you have the chariot races and other things going on that are more action oriented, more graphically violent. And the cinematography is really nice for the era. Even modern era filmmaking really hasn't surpassed the structure of what was presented in the film per se. Now, got to keep in mind there was no CGI back then. Some of the stuff they do in the film is just really interesting, and it would be really interesting to see how they made some of this stuff back then. If if they had documentaries and making films as they do today, I wish they had that stuff back then. And I may be in the minority, but I think Ben Hur is not as strong a film as the Ten Commandments, just more action oriented. I Yeah, again, I strongly believe that it was given so much critical acclaim because of how poorly Ten Commandments did at the Oscar 3 years earlier. Still, for purposes of suiting the Easter criterion, this is a top pick. And it so happens that it is the only Vatican approved film on a topic of religion, which is not a bit of trivia, but noteworthy nonetheless. It's made in 59, so it's rated G, but it really should be a PG rated film, and it is 4 out of 5 stars. Our next film is The Greatest Story Ever Told. Um, and it's got the wrong order on this somehow, and I don't know why. Let me see if I can get this figured out here. That's why. Okay, just give me a second, and I will fix it. And it's not doing what it's supposed to do, of course. What's going on here? Okay. Something is being funny. There we go. All right. Greatest Story Ever Told from 1965, directed and produced by George Stevens, screenplay by George Stevens and James Lee Burnett, based on a novel by Fulton Osler and the Bible. Starring Max von Sydow, Dorothy McGuire, Charlton Heston, which is funny. You're going to see Charlton Heston in a lot of these films. Jose Ferrer, Claude Rains. This is his last film he was appeared in, I believe. Telly Savalas, Martin Landau, David McKellen, Donald Pleasance, and dozens of other major stars were in the film in credited but minor roles. Production company, George Stevens Productions, distributed by United Artists. Release date was February 15th of 1965, with a running time of 137 to 260 minutes, 2 hours 17 minutes to 4 hours and 20 minutes. That's because there's 2 different versions of this film. What it's about is it's a retelling of the biblical account of Jesus of Nazareth from the Nativity to the Ascension, along with the assemble cast, and it is Claude Rains' final film role. It received 5 Academy Award nominations. I'm not going to run through the whole plot. There's 2 parts to the movie, and you can get either the truncated version at 2 hours and 17, or the 2-part version, which hours 4 hours and 20 minutes. My thoughts are it's not a bad movie for its era. Today, it would simply be a 2 or 3 night TV miniseries. And in fact, this film has been has presented on television as such on many occasions. For some reason, I was not thinking it was Max von Sydow as Jesus, but when I went to do the research, there it was. I guess it's probably because I'm so used to seeing the older Max von Sydow that I just seeing him young I didn't recognize him. I guess that's all I could think of there. But yeah, the film does run a bit long in the tooth, in my opinion. At least the 4.5-hour version does. But that's true of a lot of these biblical story film productions. But clearly, if they can edit it down to just over 2 hours from 4.5 hours and air it and have it make clear, concise sense, one wonders how well they could have edited some of the other films. It's certainly worth watching in either format. Rated G, again, I think it should be rated PG, but this is 1965 we're talking about, and the movie rating system wasn't started until 1968. I give it a rating of 4.5 stars. Our next one is King of Kings from 1961. And it's out of order too, for some reason. I don't know why, but I will do my best to get that straightened out. Okay. Sorry about that, folks. There we go. King of Kings from 1961, directed by Nicholas Ray, produced by Samuel Bronston, written by Philip Jordan and Ray Bradbury. Yes, that Ray Bradbury. No, John is not co-hosting this one. He is busy. You came in. You came in late, I guess. But yeah, he's helping the Easter Bunny paint eggs for stuff and and he's got other things going on with his church and stuff like that. So yes, it is up his alley, and he would probably be very good to be talking about it, but I'm on my own. Anyway, again, yes, Ray Bradbury, the science fiction author, co-wrote this based on the Christian Bible, books Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, starring Jeffrey Hunter, Siobhan McKenna, Robert Ryan, Ron Randell, Hurd Hatfield, Vivica Linfors, and Rip Torn. Narrated by Orson Welles, although he was uncredited in the film. Production company is Samuel Bronson Productions, distributed by Metro-Goldwyn-Mayer. Release date was October 11th, 1961, with a running time of 168 minutes, or rather 2 hours and 48 minutes. And this is actually one of his picks, Mark, one of John's picks. He also picked Ben-Hur, by the way. What it's about. In 63 BC, Pompey conquered Jerusalem, and the city was sacked. He entered the temple to see the treasure of Solomon and massacred the priests there. He discovered the treasure is only a collection of scrolls of the Torah. These Pompey held over a fire until an old priest reached them for them imploringly. Pompey relented and handed them to the old man and left to carry out massacres of enemy villages and towns. Many, many years later, a series of rebellions break out against the city of Rome, and so the Romans crucify many of the leaders and place Herod the Great on Judea's throne. Fast forward, a carpenter named Joseph and his wife Mary, who was about to give birth, arrive in Bethlehem for the census. Not having found accommodation for the night, they take refuge in a stable where their child Jesus is born. The shepherds, who have followed the Magi from the east, gather to worship him. However, Herod, informed of the birth of a child king, orders the centurion Lucius and orders him to take his men to Bethlehem and kill all the male children. Pop Culture Avenger. King of Kings. It's a freaking movie, though I haven't seen it in years. Yes, it is. It has been, yeah, a lot of these have been a long time since we've probably seen them. I had to do quick views of these. I didn't watch all of them all full time. They're just too long of movies to do that. Pop Culture Avenger. Make sure you watch yesterday's episode. I think you missed it. But I forget what it was, but there was something that you had mentioned that pertained on the episode yesterday. So make sure you go back on my archive and look it up. And it said, kill all the newborn male children. This forces Mary and Joseph to flee to Egypt with the child. The massacre of the innocents occurs. Herod dies, killed in his death throes by his son Herod Antipas, who then takes power. In Nazareth, Jesus, who is now 12 years old, is working with Joseph when soldiers arrive under the command of Lucius, who knows now that Jesus escaped the massacre of the infants. But Lucius does nothing and only asks that Mary and Joseph register their son's birth to 40 years' end. Years pass again, and Jewish rebels led by Barabbas and Judas Iscariot prepare to attack a caravan carrying the next governor of Judea, which is Pontius Pilate, and his wife Claudia. The ambush fails, partly due to the diligence of Lucius, and Barabbas and Judas flee for their lives. Pilate and Herod Antipas meet on the banks of the River Jordan, where John the Baptist preaches to the crowds. Jesus arrives here, now at the age of 30. He is baptized by John, who recognizes him as the Messiah. Jesus then goes into the desert, where he is tested and tempted by Satan. After 40 days in the desert, he travels to Galilee, where he recruits his apostles. In Jerusalem, Herod Antipas arrests John the Baptist, who is visited by Jesus in prison. Judas leaves to rebel Barabbas and joins the apostles. Jesus begins to preach and gather crowds, among which are Claudia, Pilate's wife, and Lucius. Herod reluctantly beheads John the Baptist on the whim of his stepdaughter, Salome, who despises him. Herod, Pilate, and the high priest, Caiaphas, are terrorized by the works and miracles of Jesus. I don't know why they're really terrorized, but they're frightened. But, this is what I've been reading, some of the reviews of others as well as plots online when I write these up. Barabbas plots a revolt in Jerusalem during Passover, during which time Jesus enters the holy city in triumph and then goes to the temple to preach. The rebels storm the Antonia fortress, with the legions of Pilate, having learned of the plot, ambush and crush the revolt, massacring the rebels. Barabbas ends up arrested. Jesus meets the disciples on the evening of Thursday, having supper one last time with them, and then afterwards goes to pray at the Garden of Gethsemane. In the meantime, Judas wants Jesus to free Judea from the Romans and to force his hand. Judas delivers him to the Jewish authorities. Jesus is brought before Caiaphas and then brought before Pilate. Pilate starts trial, but sensing that the issue is one of Jewish sensibilities, he sends him back to Herod Antipas, who in turn sends him back to Pilate. This infuriates Pilate, so he commands his soldiers to scourge Jesus. The people demand the release of Barabbas, and Pilate bows to their pressure and sentences Jesus to be crucified. Jesus, wearing a crown of thorns on his head, carries the cross to Golgotha, where he is crucified with two thieves, one of them being the penitent thief Dismas, and the other the impenitent thief Gestas. I hope I pronounced these right. It's been a long time. Desperate because he betrayed Jesus to his death, Judas hangs himself, and his body is found by Barabbas. Jesus dies in front of his mother, the Apostle John, and a few soldiers, Claudia, Pilate's wife, and Lucius, who utters the fateful words, "He is truly the Christ." His body is then taken down from the cross and is carried to a rock tomb and placed within. 2 days later, Mary Magdalene finds the tomb empty and encounters the risen Jesus. The film ends on the shores of Lake Tiberias when Jesus appears to the apostles for a final time, according to the narration, and tells them to bring his message to the ends of the world. Only a shadow is visible, forming the shape of a cross where it falls on the stretched out fishing nets. The apostles then leave, and as the shadow of Jesus falls across the screen, it could be assumed that he is ascending towards heaven. My thoughts. Jeffrey Hunter, who plays Jesus in this movie, is probably better known for playing Captain Christopher Pike in the pilot episode of Star Trek and in the episode The Menagerie, from which parts of the pilot episode were used, which speaks a lot about what we as a society hold of importance. And my next thought was there sure were a lot of these biblical movies in the 1950s and early 1960s. I found it interesting that Bradbury wrote the screenplay, and that Bradbury's time in Hollywood alone is probably a subject worthy of discussion in a future episode of the channel. We'll probably look into that somewhere down the road. The movie is what it is. Its legacy is that it was the first large budget, major studio sound film in English to depict Christ's face, and it just happens to be Christopher Pike. Anyway, it's a good film. I give it. I know that John would probably give it a 5. I give it a 3. It comes out to a 3.5. It's not my favorite one of these. I think some of the other ones are better. Our next film. Yeah, they're kind of like the Lord of the Rings of the time. Yep. Yeah, there's a lot of things you can learn about these things. Our next film is The Passion of the Christ from 2004, directed by Mel Gibson, produced by Bruce Davey, Mel Gibson, and Stephen McVitie. Screenplay by Mel Gibson and Benedict Fitzgerald, based on the Passion in the New Testament in the Bible and the Glorious Passion of our Lord Jesus Christ by Anne Catherine Emmerich. Starring Jim Caviezel, I hope I pronounced that correctly, Monica Bellucci, Maya Morgenstern, and Sergio Rabini. Production company is Newmarket Films, distributed by Icon Productions, released on February 25th of 2004, with a running time of 127 minutes or 2 hours and 7 minutes. And what it's about. This film primarily covers the final 12 hours before Jesus Christ's death, consisting of the Passion, hence the title of the film. It begins with the agony in the Garden of Olives, or Gethsemane. I can't pronounce that damn name. Pardon my language. Continues with the betrayal of Judas Iscariot, the brutal scourging at the pillar, suffering of Mary as prophesied by Simeon, and the crucifixion and death of Jesus, and ends with a brief depiction of his resurrection. However, this film also has flashbacks to particular moments in Jesus' life, some of which are biblically based, such as the Last Supper and the Sermon on the Mount, and others that are artistic license, as when Mary comforts Jesus and when Jesus crafts a table. This is another one that John picked. I've watched parts of it, not the whole thing. It's a solid movie. It received 3 Academy Award nominations and was the highest grossing Christian, and I put that in quotations, movie ever made, earning over $600 million at the box office. I think there's some stuff in it. The artistic licenses stuff that I guess that some people are kind of objected to, that I think could have been edited out to make it shorter and not hurt the film any. I think it could have been easily cut down to a 90 to 100-minute movie as opposed to a 2-hour plus movie. But, it is what it is. I think Jim Caviezel gave a very underrated performance in the movie. He didn't, I don't think he even got nominated for an Oscar for this, and I think he probably should have. But I think he might have been overlooked due to the blowback towards Mel Gibson. The film has been controversial, received largely polarized reviews, with some critics calling the film a religious classic, while others found the extreme violence distracting and excessive, and claimed that the film promoted anti-Semitism, hence the blowback towards Mel Gibson. On top of this, as the film is not in English, but instead spoken entirely in Hebrew, Latin, and reconstructed Aramaic, there is another level of resistance that the movie is given by audiences. Gibson did not want there to be subtitles, but he was forced by the Academy, by the business to allow them. Now, I'm not sure what he thought the point was with being against the subtitles. I guess he figured the movie was important enough that everybody would go learn 3 new languages to understand what was being said. I don't know. That's a noggin scratcher to me, but I think the film would have been better off had Gibson not been such an ass about things. He really did hurt the film with the way he presented himself during the marketing for the film and early release of the film. And because it's a modern film, it does get the rating it should as a rated R movie because of violence and gore, which are, yes, there's gore, and that's another complaint that you can make against the movie. But if you're being realistic and think about what's going on in some of these other films, their violence is no more shocking, and they were rated G large because of when they were made. They were probably been PG to R films themselves. So I don't really mind that it's rated R. But I would say if you're looking for a somber, darker depiction of the story of Jesus, this is your film. If you're looking for more something family friendly, go with The Greatest Story Ever Told or go with 10 Commandments. I give this a rated R rating of 4 stars. And that brings us to the 10 Commandments from 1956, which was made the earliest of the films here. Directed and produced by Cecil B. DeMille. Screenplay by Aeneas Mackenzie, Jesse L. Lasky Jr., Jack Garris, and Frederick M. Frank, based on The Prince of Egypt by Dorothy Clark Wilson, Pillar of Fire by J.H. Ingram, On Eagle's Wings by A.E. Southen, and The Book of Exodus. Starring, again, Charlton Heston. What a shocker. Yul Brynner, M. Baxter, Edward G. Robinson, Yvonne DiCarlo, Deborah Paget, John Derrick. Narrated by Cecil B. DeMille. With the production company, Cecil B. DeMille Productions, and distributed by Paramount Pictures, it was released on November 8th, 1956 in the United States. With a runtime of 220 minutes, 3 hours and 40 minutes, it had an intermission in theaters. Quite the film. Love the poster here. Particularly just well done likenesses of the actors. What it's about. After hearing the prophecy of a Hebrew deliverer, Pharaoh Ramesses I of Egypt orders the death of all newborn Hebrew males. Jochebed saves her infant son by setting him adrift in a basket on the Nile. Bithia, the Pharaoh Ramesses' recently widowed daughter and sister of the future Pharaoh Seti I, finds the basket and decides to adopt the boy, even though her servant, Memne, recognizes that the child is Hebrew. Bithia names the baby Moses. Prince Moses grows up to become a successful general, winning a war with Ethiopia and establishing an alliance. Moses and Nefertiti fall in love, but she must marry the next pharaoh. While working on the building of a city for Pharaoh Seti I's Jubilee, Moses meets the stonecutter Joshua, who tells him of the Hebrew God. Moses saves an elderly woman from being crushed, not knowing that it is his biological mother, Jochebed, and he reprimands the taskmaster and overseer, Baca. Moses reforms the treatment of slaves on the project, but Prince Ramesses, Moses' adopted brother and Seti's son, charges him with planning an insurrection. Moses says he is simply making the workers more productive, making Ramesses wonder if Moses is, in fact, the man the Hebrews are calling the deliverer. Nefertiti learns from Memne that Moses is the son of a Hebrew slaves. She kills Memne, but reveals the story to Moses after he finds a piece of Levite cloth that he was wrapped in as a baby, which Memne had kept. Moses follows Bithia to Jochebed's house, where he meets his biological mother, his brother Aaron, and sister Miriam. Moses learns about the slaves by working with them. Nefertiti urges him to return to the palace so he may help his people when he becomes pharaoh, to which he agrees after he completes the final task. Moses saves Joshua from death by killing Baca, telling Joshua that he too is Hebrew. The confession is witnessed by the overseer Dathan, who then reports to Prince Ramesses. After being arrested, Moses explains that he is not the deliverer, but he would free the slaves if he could. Seti I declares Prince Ramesses the sole heir, and Ramesses banishes Moses to the desert. At this time, Moses learns of the death of his mother. And I hope you guys don't mind. I changed some of the... I was taking a lot of posters because there were a lot of cool ones for this one. Moses makes his way across the desert to a well in Midian, and after defending 7 sisters from the Amalekites, Moses is housed with the girl's father Jethro, a Bedouin sheik, who worships the God of Abraham. Moses marries Jethro's eldest daughter, Sephora. Later, he finds Joshua, who has escaped from the hard labor imposed on the Hebrews in Egypt. While hurting, Moses sees the burning bush on the summit of Mount Sinai and hears the voice of God. Moses returns to Egypt to free the Hebrews. Moses becomes before Ramesses, now Pharaoh Ramesses II, to win the slaves' freedom, and turns his staff into a cobra. Janez, Ramses' wizard, performs the same trick with his staves, but Moses' snake swallows his. Ramses prohibits straw from being provided to the Hebrews to make their bricks. Nefertiti rescues Moses from being stoned to death by the Hebrews, wherein each reveals that he is married. Which, of course, ticks off Nefertiti. Egypt is plagued, then visited by plagues. Moses turns the river Nile to blood at a festival at Qum and brings down burning hail down upon the Pharaoh's palace. But he tells them that the next plague to fall upon Egypt will be summoned by the Pharaoh himself. Enraged at these plagues, Pharaoh Ramses orders that all firstborn Hebrews will die, but a cloud of death instead kills all the firstborn of Egypt, including the child of Ramses and Nefertiti. Despairing at the loss of his heir, Pharaoh exiles the Hebrews, who began their exodus from Egypt. After being taunted by Nefertiti, Ramses takes chariots and pursues the Hebrews to the Red Sea. Moses uses God's help to stop the Egyptians with a pillar of fire and parts the Red Sea. After the Hebrews make it to safety, he releases the walls of water, drowning the Egyptian army. The devastated Ramses returns empty-handed to Nefertiti, saying that he now acknowledges Moses' God as God. Moses again ascends the mountain Sinai with Joshua. He sees the Ten Commandments created by God with 2 stone tablets. Meanwhile, an impatient Dathan urges a reluctant Aaron to construct a golden calf idol, and a wild and decadent orgy is held by most of the Hebrews. After God informs Moses of this orgy, the latter descends from the mountain and reunites with Joshua. Enraged at the sight of the decadence, he throws the tablets at the golden calf, which explodes and kills the wicked revelers, and causing the others to wander in the world, who are surviving the explosion, to wander in the wilderness for 40 years. An elderly Moses later leads the Hebrews towards Canaan. However, he cannot enter the promised land due to a mentioned previous disobedience of the Lord. He instead names Joshua as leader and bids farewell to the Hebrews at Mount Nebo. This is C. Sylvetaville's final film of his career and is most critically and financially successful. It's also kind of a remake of something he did back into the early 20s when they were doing silent movies. It was nominated for 7 Academy Awards, including Best Picture in 1957, but it only won in the category for Best Visual Effects. It is long, at nearly 4 hours, and maybe that's why it didn't win more awards. I don't know. It did have to compete with Yul Brynner's The King and I that same year, and that probably split the voters somewhat. And that's not to say the special effects were not worthy of an Oscar. They most certainly were. I just think it deserved more than just an Oscar in this category. And again, like I said, Ben-Hur came out later, and they gave Ben-Hur all the awards, and I think it's because they didn't give this film enough praise. But the film has aired on network television every Passover or Easter since 1973, and I think that proves its true legacy as both a film and as a story. Heston and Brynner are both superb in their roles as Moses and Pharaoh Ramses. Again, rated G because of when it was made. Today, I think it'd be more of a PG rating, maybe even a PG-13, because there are plenty of killings going on throughout the movie. Whether that's the drowning of the Egyptian army, whether that's the exploding calf idol, whatever. But anyway, I give it a rating of 4.5. And that is our biblical films that are good for Easter. And we got a few more films, though. For those of you who aren't that religious, or you just want to you don't want to watch something that serious, you want to watch something that's just fun, we got some for you. Easter Parade from 1948, directed by Charles Walters, produced by Arthur Freed, screenplay by Sidney Sheldon, Francis Goodrich, I don't know how it's pronounced for sure, and Albert Hackett, starring Judy Garland, Fred Astaire, Peter Lawford, and Ann Miller. Production company Metro-Goldwyn Mayer, distributed by Lowe's Incorporated. released on June 30th, 1948, with a runtime of 108 minutes or 1 hour and 48 minutes. And what it's about, Don Hughes, played by Fred Astaire, has a falling out with a dance partner, Nadine Hale, played by Ann Miller, when she accepts a starring role in a big-budget, Ziegfeld-produced musical. The furious Don vows he can turn any girl into a dancer to replace Nadine, and he plucks singer Hannah Brown, played by Judy Garland, out of a cheap diner routine and starts training her as his new partner. With Nadine's career enjoying the spotlight, Don and Hannah struggle to reestablish themselves. Hannah falls in love with Don, but he still has feelings for Nadine, while his friend Johnny, played by Peter Lawford, lusts after Hannah, while Nadine has the hots for Johnny, who won't pursue her out of respect for Don. Oh, is this also saccharine, sickly sweet? It's a musical, so there's lots of singing and dancing. I think Julie Garland shines in the film, but Fred Astaire is just okay. He did revive his career with this movie, but he was not meant to be in the film. It was originally Gene Kelly who was supposed to play Don, but he injured his ankle playing volleyball and could not do the movie. Sid Charisse was supposed to play Nadine instead of Ann Miller, but she tore the ligaments in her knee, so she had to be replaced by Ann Miller. So the production and who was expected to do what and how was really kind of up in the air, and the end results kind of reflect this. With an endless parade of songs by Irving Berlin, the movie is not so much a movie as kind of a disjointed stage show. There are 14 performances, musical numbers that are thrown at the screen like one right after the other, practically. An exhaustive fashion with plot elements treated as interruptions between costume changes. The film reveals its intentions early, as Astaire gets to perform 2 opening numbers, Happy Easter and Drum Crazy, before a single word of story dialogue is even spoken. Director Charles Waters is basically signaling to you that the characters and story are very much a secondary concern to the dance numbers, which is a shame because there really is a worthy romantic comedy to be told in this film. And it's not that they don't tell it, it's just that they're so busy with the musical numbers that they don't tell it as well as they could. When the personalities behind all the singing are sketchily introduced, they are unusually unlikable. Don Hughes is obsessed with his dancing and treats Hannah with disdain, using her solely to get back at Nadine. Like I said, Julie Garland does deliver the most engaged performance and really good performance in the film, but the chemistry just isn't there between her and Fred Astaire, and there's a reason for that. Age difference being one of them. And any reasons for Hannah to fall in love with Don start and stop at childish infatuation. Furthermore, Astaire, Don, never really convincingly reciprocates any feelings, leaving our central romance a lopsided jumble. Therefore, I think the movie does get overlooked. Had Gene Kelly been able to do the film, I think it would be a much better film. Astaire was just a little bit too old for the role, and I think that affected the chemistry between him and Julie Garland. Nadine is portrayed as cold and manipulative, with Ann Miller stuck in a sadistic plastic smile throughout. Meanwhile, Johnny is abandoned with no character development whatsoever, so Peter Lawford is just stranded in the middle of the film as the blandest of second fiddle nice guy who would be lovers. Again, the characters and story fall short of the music and the dance. But there is enjoyment for this film, and that does come from the better musical numbers, all making use of sparkling colors. Drum Crazy is an energetic Astaire romp through a toy store. Miller rocks the joint and steals the movie with machine gun like tap dancing and shaking the blues away. And Astaire and Garland enjoy their best moments in A Couple of Swells. But all in all, it's just an average movie. I do wonder how much it would have been better if Gene Kelly played Don. The 20-plus year age gap between Astaire and Garland just does not match and really hurts the film, I think. It was rated G, and I give it a 3 out of 5 stars for an average movie. but it's a fun film to just watch in terms of the a quick, relatively quick and breezy Easter related type film. Our next film is Hank and Mike from 2008, directed by Matthew Klink, produced by Thomas Michael, Nicholas Tabarrok, and Pierre Even, written by Paolo Mancini and Thomas Michael, starring Thomas Michael, Paolo Mancini, Joe Mantegna, and Chris Klein. Release date was January 2008 at the NAPP Next Gen Film Festival and March 2009 in Canada. It has been released in the US since, but I don't know exactly when. It wasn't listed. The running time is an hour and 26 minutes. This is a very dark comedy. Two downsized Easter bunnies whose friendship starts to suffer when a multinational corporation that owns all the holidays decides to make some serious cutbacks. Hank and Mike are the Felix Unger and Oscar Madison of holiday mascots. They may seem like a mismatched pair, yet all their differences are exactly what's kept them together for all these years. And while Hank is a hard drinking lazy man, Mike can't seem to look past his own insecurities long enough to realize how truly miserable he is. Once a year, Hank and Mike dutifully venture out to deliver Easter baskets to families everywhere. This year, however, Easter Enterprises has taken a hit, and all Tier 2 holidays, Christmas and Hanukkah being the prime examples of Tier 1. So all the Tier 2 holidays are now fair game for downsizing. Since Hank and Mike only work once a year during this period, their jobs are the first to go, subsequently relegated to the unemployment office and unable to break free of their fairy-tale past. These two longtime pals are about to discover just how valuable their friendship can be in times of need. Like I said, this is a very dark comedy film. It's more like a Kevin Smith type comedy than it is. That's more about the relationship about these two guys who dress up as Easter bunnies and go around. It's well executed for what it is, but this is for the sarcastic, anti-holiday person and not a family movie. Just saying, so you understand. It's an R-rated movie, and it's a 3.5-star film. Our next film is Harvey from 1950, and it's out of order again. I wish I knew why I had that problem, but I will get that fixed again. Prince of Egypt and Refugee Works is decent. I think if John had time to be involved, he would have mentioned that one, but he didn't. So I didn't think of it. Never seen Easter Parade. Again, it's a nice film. If you like Judy Garland, it's worth it for watching her anyway. Let me see if I can get this fixed again here. I don't know why it did that. I want to make sure it doesn't do it again. And okay. All right. Harvey in 1950. Yeah, Harvey's awesome. Um, whoops. Uh, sorry, this computer's being fussy today. Anyway, directed by Henry Koster, produced by John Beck, written by Mary Chase, Oscar Brodney, and Miles Connolly, starring James Stewart, Josephine Hall, Peggy Dow, and Charles Drake. Production company distributed by Universal Pictures. Release date December 21st, 1950. Wait, this is a Christmas movie, not an Easter movie. No, it's an Easter movie, trust me. Running time 104 minutes, 1 hour 44 minutes. What it's about: Elwood P. Dowd is an amiable but eccentric man whose best friend is an invisible 6 foot 3.5 inch tall white rabbit named Harvey. As described by Elwood, Harvey is a puka, a benign but mischievous creature from Celtic mythology. Elwood spends most of his time taking Harvey around town, drinking at various bars, and introducing Harvey to almost every person he meets, much to the puzzlement of strangers, though Elwood's friends have accepted Harvey's supposed existence. His older sister Vita and his niece Myrtle May live with him in his large estate, but have become social outcasts along with Elwood due to his obsession with Harvey. After Elwood ruins a party Vita and Myrtle Ray had arranged in secret, Vita finally tries to have him committed to a local sanatorium. In exasperation, she admits to attending psychiatrist Dr. Lennon Sanderson that she sees Harvey every once in a while herself. Mistaking Vita as the real mental case, Sanderson has Elwood released and Vita locked up. Dr. Chumley, head of the sanatorium, discovers this mistake and realizes he must bring Elwood back, searching the town with orderly Marvin Wilson. With Vita's help, Chumley eventually tracks down Elwood to his favorite bar, Charlie's, and decides to confront him there. 4 hours later, Marvin returns to the sanatorium but learns from Sanderson and Nurse Kelly that Chumley has not returned with Elwood. They arrive at Charlie's and find Elwood alone, who explains Chumley had wandered off with Harvey after several rounds of drinks. When asked, Elwood explains that he met Harvey one night several years ago after escorting a drunk friend to a taxi, and they had since enjoyed going to bars and socializing with other patrons to hear their grand life stories and aspirations. Convinced that Elwood is crazy and may have harmed Chumley, Marvin calls the police and has Elwood escorted to the sanatorium. But Chumley returns to the sanatorium, disheveled and paranoid, and is followed by an invisible presence. When the others arrive, Chumley invites Elwood to his office. In private, Chumley says he's convinced that Harvey is real, and Elwood explains his various powers, namely his ability to stop time and send anyone to any destination for as long as they like. Vita arrives with Judge Gaffney and Myrtle Ray prepared to sue the sanatorium and commit Elwood, but they are convinced by Sanderson that an injection of a serum called Formula 977 will stop Elwood from, quote-unquote, seeing the rabbit. As they prepare the injection, Vita tries to pay the cab driver, but is unable to find her coin purse, prompting Elwood to help pay him. Warned by Elwood's kindness, the cab driver explains how he has driven many people to the sanatorium to receive the same medicine, warning Vita that Elwood would soon become just a normal human being, and you know what stinkers they are. Vita is upset by this and halts the injection. She then finds her coin purse, realizing that Harvey had intervened to save her brother. Leaving with Vita and Myrtle May, Elwood finds Harvey, who decides he's going to stay with Chumley so that he can take him on his fantasy trip to Akron. Elwood walks out of the gate, sad and downtrodden, but suddenly he finds that Harvey returned to him. Harvey and Elwood reaffirm their friendship as they follow Vita and Myrtle Ray into the sunrise. This is a great film. It is arguably Jimmy Stewart's one of his best performances and his favorite character he's ever played by his own admission. Great movie, and as a kid, which I think I saw this for the first time when I was 6 years old, I always said Harvey was the Easter Bunny, which is why nobody could see him, because I didn't know what a puka was and I didn't even care. And the more I think about it, the idea of an Irish Easter Bunny who spends the rest of the year with his buddy going to bars and getting drunk is the perfect adult version of this entity. He gets so drunk that he steals eggs all year round, paints them, and puts them out for the kids to find. It makes perfect sense. Rated G. It probably would have PG if it was a modern film, but it's G because when it was made, 5 out of 5 stars. And our next film is Peter Rabbit, a 2018 film. It is one of those live-action CGI films directed by Will Gluck, produced by Will Gluck and Zara Nalbandian. Hope I didn't slaughter that too much. Written by Rob Lieber and Will Gluck, based on the tale of Peter Rabbit by Beatrix Potter. Starring James Corden, Colin Moody, Margot Robbie, Elizabeth Debicki, Daisy Ridley, Rose Byrne, and Domhnall Gleeson. Production companies include Columbia Pictures, Sony Pictures Animation, Animal Logic, Olive Bridge Entertainment, 2.0 Entertainment, and Screen Australia. Whew. A lot of production companies for this. Distributed by Sony Pictures, was released on February 9th, 2018, and has a runtime of 95 minutes or an hour and 35 minutes. And what it's about: in England's Lake District, Peter Rabbit, his cousin Benjamin Bunny, his triplet sisters Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail spend most of their days picking on old Mr. McGregor, stealing vegetables from his garden. They are friends with a kind-hearted local woman named Bee, who spent her time painting pictures of the rabbits as well as surrounding nature. Bee took on a motherly role with the rabbits after their mother's death and after their father had been killed and eaten in a pie by Mr. McGregor when they were young. Gee, I wonder why they keep picking on Mr. McGregor. One day, Peter is forced to leave his jacket in Mr. McGregor's garden and then have to go back to retrieve it. However, it's a trap set by Mr. McGregor, who catches him and suddenly dies of a heart attack due to decades of unhealthy lifestyle choices, although Peter claims that he killed him. Enthralled, Peter invites all the local animals and takes over Mr. McGregor's manor. Meanwhile, in London, Mr. McGregor's great-nephew Thomas, uptight workaholic who works in the toy department of Harrods department store, where he waits for a promotion to associate general manager. He learns about his death of his uncle, and he indifferently accepts this because he doesn't really know about him. But he's infuriated over losing the promotion that he was waiting for to a lazy nephew of the managing director, and is subsequently fired for losing his temper. His now former manager encourages him to spend some time in the country. When Thomas learns that his great uncle's manor is valuable and that he's inherited it, he decides to appraise and prepare it for resale in order to start his own toy store near Harrods to get his revenge on getting fired. He kicks out Peter and the animals and begins to upgrade the security of the garden wall and gates despite Bee's objections. When Peter and a reluctant Benjamin sneak back into the garden, Thomas catches the latter and attempts to drown Benjamin in a river, but hesitates. Benjamin's relatives rescue him. Thomas instead accidentally drops a prized set of binoculars that Bee had given him earlier, forcing him to retrieve it. That allows the animals to escape. Thomas and Bee end up falling in love with each other, much to Peter's dismay and jealousy. He and Thomas start a war with each other over it by setting traps and other offensive nuisances for each other. Things get out of hand, however, when Peter rewires an electric fence set up by Thomas, prompting Thomas to throw dynamite into the rabbit's burrow. After the rabbits trigger Thomas's allergy to blackberries, he attacks them in the garden with some of the dynamite on the warpath against them and tells Peter that his antics caused him to become aggressive and attempts to strangle him, but Bee, having heard the commotion, comes by and Thomas feigns having saved Peter from choking. Peter detonates dynamite, proving to be that Thomas was using dynamite, but it accidentally blows up the burrow and causes the tree on top of the burrow to collapse on top of Bee's art studio and destroying it. Bee ignores Thomas's explanation of the rabbit's involvement and ends their relationship. Thomas, heartbroken, returns to London to work at Harrods again. Peter feels remorseful for the damage his recklessness has caused, and upon learning that Bee intends to leave the neighborhood, he and Benjamin race to London to bring Thomas back. Tricking Thomas into thinking he was imagining the rabbit's ability to talk, Peter explains to Thomas to follow his heart. They rush back to the country, where Peter shows Bee the detonator and presses it for her to see, thus confirming Thomas's previous claims that a rabbit caused the explosion. Peter and Thomas explain to Bee and plead for her not to leave. Wishing to remain with Bee, Thomas no longer wants to sell the manor, but unfortunately they discover an unpleasant wealthy couple who Thomas had encountered earlier and been tormented by has already bought the house and finalized the sale. Not really sure how that happens. It's like, how could you not know? You got kind of to sign the paperwork, so I don't know. Anyway, Peter, his family, and friends use their tricks to force the couple out of the house while allowing Thomas to move back in, while keeping their deposit because, well, they decided they don't want to live there. And so, again, a little bit silly, but that's what happens. Thomas and B resume their relationship, and he allows the wildlife to take food from the garden within reason. Peter and his family restore the burrow and the yard with Thomas and B's help. And Thomas sets up his own toy shop in a nearby village where B showcases her paintings of the rabbits. This is simply a fun kids movie for Easter. It's PG because it's a little excessive on the violence. I mean, dynamite to explode the rabbit's burrow is a little bit excessive after all. And there are some other things that means parents should probably watch the film with their kids. But overall, it's a good, lighthearted break from the more somber Jesus' life and death movies. Give it a 3.5 stars. And that is pretty much it for the show. Hope that did a decent enough job. I'm sorry that John wasn't here to add his thoughts. I think it would have, like Mark Andrew Smith had said, it's really up John's alley more than mine, but it's he had other things he had to do, so that's the way it is. Now, tomorrow, I will be back in the afternoon to finish the inks on that Recovery Incorporated piece, and I decided that I'm not going to be working on Easter Sunday, though, so I'll get back to the Batman Predator the following weekend. Okay? In the meantime, if you want to reach me, Facebook, Lewis.BrightRaven, Twitter at LewisBrightRaven2, on DeviantArt.com/BrightRaven, on YouTube, Quoth Raven, Lewis BrightRaven, Gmail, Quoth Raven, LBR72 at gmail.com. That's the best place to reach me. Killer Clowns from Outer Space. We'll have to bring that up at another future episode. Remind me of that in email, Avenger, because I'll have to kind of do those in a certain type of theme for science fiction. Use the Quoth Raven LBR72 at Gmail address for that, or LewisBrightRaven at yahoo.com. Mondays is our news and reviews. Wednesdays is our what did you get this week. Thursday night is roundtable talk. Next week we will have David Hahn and Benjamin Morse as our guests. And Friday will be genre night next week. Maybe I'll even bring that up for next week. Maybe we'll do some more crazy science fiction films or something. I don't know. We'll see what's going on. Saturdays is our live draw. Sundays is our live draw. Again, this week, I will be finishing up the inks on the Recovery Incorporated piece that I've been working on the past couple of shows. And I will see you guys next time. So have a good weekend. Stay safe. Enjoy your Easter.